This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bully Managed Podcast. This is the podcast where we discuss marketing tips, we discuss business tips, all to help assist you in your business journeys. I'm your host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's Partnership Coordinator. Today, I'm joined here with a very special guest, Dan Salganik from Visual Fizz. Hi, Dan. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Did I butcher your last name at all?
No, you actually did well. Yeah, without even trying, you've been great.
Oh, great. Yeah, no, I butchered other people's names, so I was worried, but I'm glad.
You got it.
Well, it's great to have you on the podcast today. To kind of break the ice a little bit and get the ball rolling, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, about Visual Fizz, and the whole shebang?
Yeah, I'll start with myself. I've been in the marketing world basically my entire career. Started my first business back in college. Actually went part-time in school to start my first company, and then went into the marketing space, working in a number of agencies, and launched Visual Fizz, which I'll get into. Um, Love to travel, love cocktails and coffee, starting businesses, and just kind of living a fairly active lifestyle in general. Visual Fizz is an 8-year-old agency as of right now. I noticed that we're almost hitting our 8-year mark, which is crazy. And we are a full service, predominantly B2B focused agency. We verticalize in industrial, manufacturing, construction, technology, but we have quite a bit of experience in a handful of industries, from nonprofit to health, cannabis, uh, universities and higher ed, and you name it. So, one kind of cool, really quick tidbit of us as well is that the average tenure of our team members is about 10 to 15 plus years. So everybody on the Visual Fizz side, nearly everybody has at least a decade of experience, if not substantially more. So I think that's a nice little differentiator of Visual Fizz versus even agencies I've worked at before.
That's amazing. I think, well, I want to ask you this question. Where have you traveled? Because you said you like traveling.
Great question. So I have a personal goal to travel 100 days a year. I'm generally working, and now I have a relatively newborn, so it's changed a little bit, but we're still making our ways. But I've been to a good handful of countries in Asia. I've done probably about 70% of the United States. I've done Central America. I've done most of the Caribbean, almost all of Europe. Been to some countries in the Middle East. Have yet to explore Southern South America. I've been to Canada, Mexico. So yeah, even since starting Visual Fizz, which we could talk about even later, that was all abroad. I actually did a 4-month trip to Asia launching this company. And I just think it's very important to stay open and build a culture that is, friendly towards the remote lifestyle, if you can do it.
That's so interesting because I think I've traveled a lot too. I'm actually Central American, so I'm from El Salvador, but
Oh, nice.
I moved to Asia when I was 18 for college. So I did a lot of traveling when I was super like as soon as I moved out, I sort of started to travel a lot. And
Awesome.
the reason I was asking you is because and you said it yourself. I think traveling really makes your perspective of the world change because you sort of
Mhm.
discover the way that other people live their lives in different places. And I think when you put it into a marketing perspective, it really shows you how different marketing can be in different parts of the world. But at the same time, it's the same thing. I don't know if that
Oh
makes
yeah.
sense.
No, it does. You're kind of closed off in a bubble if you don't move around, and you're definitely right, because whether you go to Asia, South America, Europe, North America, we're not all that different. And even though our cultures are substantially different, how we run our day-to-days, having jobs, where we eat, when we eat, what we kind of expect. It's relatively similar across, globally. And, many of our clients are global. And so you also have to understand like some of the differences between work style and how to manage, different cultures and things like that as well. So definitely see it.
Yeah, no, and I totally feel that because I feel like so I graduated college in Taiwan. That's where I was studying.
Oh,
And
nice.
I stayed there to like try to get some work experience. I was a newly graduated student, and when I was there, I realized like I don't know, I guess this happens to everybody, but my life completely changed from being a student to being a sort of the workforce. And that in and of itself is like a huge change. But I think a huge change for me was also just culturally, I had to get used to the work environment in Taiwan and how Asian culture sort of bled into the work environment and how, like the way that people conducted themselves, the way that the interview process would be, all of that was sort of like a new thing for me because I was still very much westernized in my way of thinking, and I had to sort of adapt to that. And, the reason that I'm bringing that up is because I there was this one job where, um, they were like it was a marketing job, and they really wanted to get people from every country that they were doing marketing in, 'cause the
Hmm.
company international, but they wanted, like, if they were gonna have a marketing team in Spain, they wanted to have people from Spain in the marketing team, right? That was kinda like their thing, so I applied to the job from Spain, and I didn't get it because I wasn't Spanish, and I was like,
Hmm.
I'm Latina, like, I thought I would be great for the job, but they said, "Yeah, but you're not from Spain." And it really sort of helped me. I think at the moment, I didn't understand it, and then as I got experience, I realized, like, well, yeah, because it's like marketing is so intrinsic to a location and a
Oh, yeah.
lifestyle that sometimes, like, when you're there, you're gonna be able to understand it a lot more.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of clients that reach out to us, especially from some from Asia, but more from Europe, when they start to scale up and they realize that the economy of Europe is just not as large as the economy of North America, especially obviously United States, like they'll reach out to us to try to develop a US infrastructure. So we've had a lot of clients in manufacturing and technology where they've already built up, and even consumer packaged goods, where they've built up a bit of a presence in the European market, especially Western Europe and Germany, France, the UK. But they realized that the United States is so different. And then, funny enough, I had some clients out of Belgium who were like, how do we reach the United States, or how's the weather in the US? And I'm like, well, the US is like 5 countries. Because if you're marketing to New Yorkers, it's not the same marketing to a Californian, and it's not the same to a Texan, to the Montana and Illinois. So you really have to think about it as if it's regional, not even countrywide. It's exponentially more complex than people even realize, even here, domestically.
No, totally. I get that. And I feel like, being a person that understands sort of a multicultural perspective really helps when you have a business because I genuinely like I've had very international jobs my whole life. And I've always kind of been in a position where I have to sort of speak a different language when I'm working, talk to people from different places. And I feel like a lot of the biggest issues that I've seen are always with multicultural stuff is always like just mindsets, and a lot of it is just cultural, and a lot of it is just one person being able to understand the logic of the other person simply because they're
Yeah.
just from different backgrounds.
100%. I've seen that quite a bit for sure.
Yeah. And I see that a lot. So I think it's great that you've sort of been able to, see all of these different places. Even if you're there for a bit, I think it always just kind of gives you a little bit of perspective. Obviously not like if you're living in a place, but I think that, even if I've been in a place for a week, it still sort of like opens my eyes to how
Oh,
stuff.
yeah. I try to travel slow too. So everywhere that when I can afford to do so, right? Because it's hard sometimes to have the time, but I try to plan my trips to be at least a month long, because you do the touristy stuff that you have to do over time, but you really find yourself entrenched in the culture. And I think that to me is very important. So when we do travel, we find ourselves more sitting at local coffee shops and bars, and talking to people and sitting at the countertop and asking what life is like. So yeah, I agree with you. And I think it's nice to do slow travel, as I kind of like to think about it. Um, find yourself at an Airbnb in some local neighborhood versus a hotel. I give you 100%.
That's less exhausting too. Like I've done like I'll be there for a week and I do every touristy thing for like the whole
It's
week. And then
tiring.
I come back to like once I'm back from my trip, I'm more tired than I was when I left. It's like, oh,
Yeah, no, I get it. I love museums, but there's only so many you can see where they start to blend in. And I think like I try to break it up where there's one or two major things we do that day, and then the rest is really just exploratory and
yeah.
so for sure.
It happened to me in Japan. Like I traveled around Japan and there were so many temples that I think towards the end they were just I mean, they were beautiful, but I had been seeing temples every day and I would like
Hmm.
go like 4 or 5 a day because they were all famous. And
Yeah.
towards the end, like me and the guy that I was traveling with, he was my friend. We were like, let's just not go to the last one. It's so far away. We were so tired. And like you said, like yeah, being able to sort of separate that would have probably made the experience a lot better.
100%.
Yeah. Well, I also wanted to ask you because I know that, I mean, it's 8 years of Visual Fizz you mentioned. So I'm assuming that's what, 2016, right?
Yeah, it was 2016 going into 17. Yep.
How did your life experiences or, just anything shape you or inspire you into starting your own agency? Because I feel like that's a big leap from sort of being in the workforce to actually being a business owner.
Good question. So I've always been entrepreneurially minded. I come from entrepreneur family, and even in college, I knew I was going to start businesses. Like I don't even think I don't know what the future of me is, but I don't know if I'll ever work a real job again. And I came out of college to get some experience. And again, I mentioned I started my own company when I was not old enough. There's a memory of me going to a bar to speak on behalf of my company that I launched, but they didn't let me into the bar that I was supposed to be speaking at. And I'm like, I'm a speaker there. So, even as 19, 20-year-old, I was launching a business and managed a team of 10. And it was pretty interesting. We ended up closing that business, but went into the digital marketing space. And I worked at probably at least a dozen agencies as a contractor, as a full-time person, as a freelancer. And I got to understand a lot of the intricacies because my background is in operations management and finance, not even marketing. But I enjoyed running projects. I enjoyed understanding the finances of the project and building something out of nothing. And I worked at agencies where they were so big that I kind of did nothing. I considered myself a seat warmer. I'm just building clients, a couple $100 an hour. Like, granted, this was 10 years ago, so now it would be more. Um, I was working at small agencies where I did everything, but I was not a specialist. So that was a challenge in and of itself, taught me a lot. And I worked at mid-sized agencies where I kind of found a happy place, but I kept on seeing a lot of issues like nepotism. They're getting high six-figure employees that shouldn't really be there, underbilled people, projects that weren't really running successfully because, too much effort was put into creating case studies that were sexy versus actual ROI-driven results, stuff like that. And I ended up getting let go along with 1/3 of my team. So the company had to let go of a lot of people. I came into my office, same as usual. I was actually 4 days from closing on my first condo. Pretty young guy. I think I was 23 at the time. And they said, "Oh, don't come in. We're letting you go. Have a nice life."
What
You
important
know,
was for you though? Like,
yeah. But they didn't know, I get it. You got to make a decision. Project managers are tough. They're expensive and oftentimes not the ones who are producing the income. Um, that was okay. Honestly, I called my realtor. I canceled the purchase. I ended up, getting some severance, some unemployment, I was contracting, freelancing. So I just said, you know what, I'm just going to save as much as I can. I was working all the time, like double jobs, just to save everything because I realized I've been contracting and freelancing this whole time. What if I build a team out of it? I'm good at managing projects. I know how to run a business. I've been managing all these, $1 million projects at these agencies, seeing mistakes. Like, what if I just do it myself? So I ended up putting out a post about finding a co-founder because my skill set is ops management, project management, running the company, but I can't really speak to the depths of being a true marketer in the weed. Like I know it, but I can't, I'm not an implementer. So I met my co-founder and we had a good conversation over hours. And I was like, let's just try it out. whatever, like, what do we have to lose? Like, if we do a project or two, maybe we make a few bucks, then we go our separate ways if it doesn't work, or we stick together and build a business. Um, she said, cool, let's do it. And I told her, hey, by the way, I'm going to Asia for a few months. So we're going to start this all abroad. We're going to do a fully remote agency. That was 2016. So like well before COVID and everything.
That's
And
what
just,
this was before remote work was cool.
yeah, it was kind of the digital nomad lifestyle that people talk about a lot. And I kind of like, I feel like that's a bit of like a, not always the best way to put it, because sometimes there's a negative repercussion, like negative connotation, where people are like selling affiliate stuff or this and that. But it was just like, hey, if we could do this abroad, let's do it. Um, we got a couple of clients kind of worldwide. Like we got a client out of Kuwait, we got a client somewhere else, built our team, and giving you a very long answer, but ultimately that's how we got started, is saying like, I think we could do this better. I think we could be smarter. And even at that point, we hired a person with 15 years of experience. We had no money. I designed this ugly logo, which is now we have a similar version to it. I built an ugly site, and this was 10 years ago. Spent $50 and said, let's just try it out. And yeah, we're here today. 8 years later, we've got a full team. So it's been a journey for sure. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I didn't realize this. I think that's great though, because like I think the fact that you had sort of the guts to start something remote before remote work was, I guess, quote unquote, normalized. And I do understand what you mean, like the digital nomad, sort of that terminology is not very. It can give negative connotations, and a lot of people associate that with laziness, and just like an excuse to gentrify some country, which is, I mean, maybe for some people that's true, but I don't think that it's necessarily every digital nomad's reality,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. And I mean, for me, it was, hey, I have time. I saved, I was a young person. Like I didn't work all that long. And I saved basically where like, I was like, I'm just going to devote all my free time to running a business, but I'm also going to enjoy my life, because when am I going to be able to it was to Asia. When am I going to be able to do that? And so, really got to enjoy that and not try to do the whole, like, look at me lifestyle. And I'm sitting in a mansion in Bali. I was staying at $5 a night hostels and meeting locals and meeting other people from Australia and Europe and Asia and Africa, basically everywhere. It doesn't matter. But just kind of building infrastructure so that when I'm back from that trip, we can kind of go full steam ahead and have a small business, but a legitimate business.
No, I mean, it totally makes sense, and I think it's still great. What I was wondering though is, you guys do specifically, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, and I did take a look at your website. You guys have focused on B2B marketing,
Mhm.
right? So it's kind of B2B digital marketing. When you started Visual Fizz, what led you to kind of, I think a lot of people when they're starting a business, it's kind of like figuring out what focus they're going to give it. What made you want to focus on B2B businesses as opposed to B2C or any other kind of industry?
Good question. When we launched, we were completely different. First, when we launched, we were actually like this, like, hey, you can work with an agency that has team members all over the place, all over the world. And we're like, whoa, that's really hard. Let's not do that. Unfortunately, so I kind of went back on what I just told you. I was like, this is hard. So then we went into becoming an experiential agency, and we wanted to build an experiential marketing firm that's focused on combining digital and physical. So we were going to build an app and do like some crazy kind of stuff where we can combine, understand people's emotions in real time. And we're very heavily focused on understanding the disconnect between digital and physical. Um, but one thing led to another where it was very challenging to sell. And I'm glad, with COVID and everything, we weren't in that space, because I think we would have probably closed our doors. Uh, But we started hiring really good people that were technical. And to be fully transparent, we had no vertical. We had no vision of who we were besides kind of your generic agency. Not in a bad way. I think we always had good work, but we were never verticalized by industry or service. Um, about 5 years ago, we landed a kind of larger client for the company that allowed us to start hiring people full time and really putting money back into the business and paying ourselves a couple dollars. And then we started realizing, hey, this is kind of a route we're taking. So it was in industrial manufacturing. We got more and more clients. But if you look at our client base, I mean, we have anything from some of the largest tech companies on the planet to shoe companies to construction, manufacturing, museums. So we've never really been verticalized. And what you're seeing on the website as of today was kind of the brainchild of 6 months of really heavily thinking like what is our brand and what do we stand for and who are our clients? Which means we have to alienate a lot of people that come onto our website because we realize that we're not going to scale up the way we want to. We're kind of have a plateau unless we verticalize. And even though we're still a full service agency from a service perspective, we decided to take our 8 industries with 4 sub industries with 32 industries and break it into just 4. At least that's how we sell. But we have other ones, but we realized what we're good at is B2B. And there's a very particular word that we didn't talk about, which is established. And what that really means is, we're at the size now where we can't really work with startups. We work with brands that are either old or multi-generational or heritage, but all those words sound kind of nasty. So established is the best way to put basically a company that's built a reputation. It might be 30 to 100 years old, and they're here to work with an agency of folks who know what they're doing to really clean up shop and make sure that it's running smoothly. So it's kind of a newer thing that you're seeing because it's even the homepage you're looking at right now is only a week old. We redid it. So a lot of thinking went into doing exactly the question that you asked.
Oh, I didn't know that. So like you guys have already, grown to a place where I guess like newbies are not sustainable for you anymore, basically, right?
Yeah, that was a hard decision because there are people who are interested, and I do feel for them because I am an entrepreneur and the founder of a small business. But the challenge for us is we are we are a mid-size, we're a small to mid-size agency. We're not mid, but like we are kind of getting there with team members who have those 10, 15 years of experience. There are sometimes startups that fit what we're looking for. For example, if they're venture backed, if it's like a serial founder who's done this multiple times, had an exit, things like that. They know the expectation of working with an agency. But candidly, it's been very challenging because there's a lot of emotion as a founder to invest in agencies because they're expensive. And candidly, the results take more time. They could be larger results. But when it's your dollars on the line, you're a little bit more emotional to get rid of those dollars. And so over time, we decided we really want to work with companies that are on that growth stage or enterprise, because I think the work that we're capable of doing is at that level. So yeah, we kind of made the hard decision to say, hey, if there's any startups, like let's definitely have that conversation to see if it's a fit. But it is a bigger investment than going to maybe a smaller firm or singular contractors and specialists.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think like if the quality that you can provide fits better to a different client, it would make sense that you would want to focus on that opposed to um a, a a client that might not be that lucrative. I think with small business owners in general, a huge part of the conversation is the fact that there's also a lot of budget constraints. With up and coming businesses, I don't think that budget is still as loose as like a brand like Coca-Cola or something like that, where they probably have endless money. But I think like with up and coming brands, there's a big difference into how much they are willing to spend, and I think obviously the results are going to be better if you have more money to invest on marketing campaigns.
Yeah, and even like a company like Coke is way out of reach for us oftentimes. And we do have some enterprise clients, but they bring us on. Ironically, many of our enterprise multi-billion-dollar clients are some of our smallest revenue clients. But that's something I've tried to focus on is, hey, let's win the project to show that we can do it, right? We have some big names on our portfolio, but the projects aren't very large. And that's why the established name is important because our bread and butter is somewhere between, and this can so range, but anywhere from $20 million company to $1 billion company. And I say this huge range because a $600 million construction company annually is not that big compared to the other major players. The unit economics just are different. So our bread and butter is really those clients who have a bit of a marketing budget that are looking to work with a boutique agency that is not like a Leo Burnett or an Ogilvy or, um, Edelman, et cetera, that are taking, minimum monthly investments of 50 or $100,000 at least. We're kind of in that sweet spot of we're looking for growth. We're not a startup. We're not an enterprise, but like we have the investment to not only pay you as an agency, but also cover media costs and paid social, paid search, PR, expos, conferences. And like that is our sweet spot. Some companies that can truly think through that full scope of marketing. Because budget, no matter what the size of the company, is always the number one topic of conversation.
I think budget is like, I think every company's always trying to just make it the smallest possible, right?
That happens. Yeah. Yeah. Especially the past couple of years, it's been a different space in the marketing world for sure, with budgets and how people are thinking about their dollars for sure.
So this is my last question that I have for you, but with the way that marketing has changed nowadays, I think social media, AI, all of these sort of different new things that have come up have really changed the marketing game, um, and sales. I just like, the two go hand in hand. So like I genuinely have seen that change within the last few years. And as social platforms sort of evolve and some of them go away and another one comes in, sort of that when stuff like that happens, we have seen a lot of changes with marketing, specifically with B2C consumers, right? Like with that sort of bracket, I think we see a lot of changes. And I've spoken to other people on podcasts who tell me that um, from the B2B perspective, marketing is pretty much the same. Like it hasn't the changes, they don't really feel those changes as much as like a B2C like business might feel it. And I wanted to ask, how you have felt this as a person who has been sort of like helping around bigger businesses, different businesses. I think you have a very interesting perspective because I also speak to a lot of people who work with small business owners, and that's also always just a very different game because it's all about scaling and not, like competition in this type of environment per se.
Yeah. Um, it's definitely changed, I think, the market. And I'll speak internally and externally. I think internally it's allowed us to be faster and a little bit more smooth in our processes. And I am definitely very open to team members utilizing AI to develop ideas, to develop campaign ideas, like use it as a resource, right? Oftentimes when I'm tired at the end of the day, I actually I do speech to text and I take the text and I use AI to clean it up. So there's areas where you're still getting Dan out of the AI, except it's just, a different process, which makes it a little easier to use my brain power on things like conversations, calls, meetings, etc. And then more of like the logistical items I could use there. As it pertains to the general market, I feel it goes two ways. AI is obviously a massive topic of conversation right now. I've been to probably 150 AI events, and I think there's a huge use case for AI, but I'm finding that probably particularly in B2B and when you get into that higher level of thinking in terms of like the business size, um, I've had a lot of people like, let's just have AI build the website. And I'm like, go ahead. Or like, let's have AI do this. And you find that the quality that AI provides is just not there yet. And so I do believe that eventually it will probably do great work, but right now it's not there. And so I don't see it as a threat in the same way that maybe others do. Like it's the death of marketing agencies. Like I've been in the agency space for with all my probably 13, 14 years, I've been hearing that since the beginning. I think the biggest thing for agency owners, team members is to understand that you've got to use these tools to your advantage and be faster than your competitors. And so when it comes to AI, for example, in the SEO space, Google's not going to. Maybe people were going to see positive results putting out 100 posts because AI does it for 2 months. But I have a very strong feeling that Google is not going to like that putting out garbage, and we're already seeing that happen. So in my world, I'm going and I'm pushing my team members to understand how Google's and Perplexities and Chat GPT's search functionality works, going behind the scenes and saying, okay, instead of trying to beat Google, work with all these other platforms and answer questions, become a helpful resource center, and find a way to be an early adopter into the way AI does their searchability. So I think as long as we can kind of use it to our advantage, that's going to be kind of the positive. But for small businesses, like you mentioned, um, I think it makes sense to use AI for most things. Like you're not looking to create the world's best something. You're just trying to stay afloat. So if you use AI for social media, writing your blogs, as long as there's a human element to it, I think it's fine. Um, but it's very easy to see when something has no personality, no human touch. Um, Even like if I get something back here and there from whoever, like a RFP, I could tell the minute that I look at it that it's an AI written piece of content. And I think that people are going to start to, like for me, for example, start to get a little bit discouraged by folks who are using it to do everything in their job. Like I actually even in job postings say, if you provide me an AI response, I'm automatically disqualifying the resume or like the response because I want a human interaction.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like AI helps you get kickstarted. It helps, you know, not stare at a blank page, basically.
Mhm.
It can be like a tool for optimizing work. I don't think it's at a place where it can replace it. I can totally tell when something's AI. If anybody has ever had ChatGPT write them an email, they know they're so extra. Like, and I can just tell when I get AI formed emails because they're extremely long just to say have a good day, for example.
Exactly. Yeah, I always have it make small improvements because sometimes I'm brain dead after a long day. And I just say, maybe improve the grammar. Like very subtle things where my mind is still doing 60% and 70% of the work. And then it's like, I'm not going to be thinking about grammar at 6 o'clock on a Friday. I just want the email sent. So I'm like, improve the grammar send. So I agree. I'm not going to have it write a full custom email or anything like that.
Yeah, no, like if I've tried that sometimes when I'm like dumped in with a complicated email and maybe I'll have them sort of write the first draft and then I'll go in and rewrite a lot of it, but at least I have something to work with. Or like you said, have AI sort of proofread and edit and stuff like that. But it's I agree, it's not a place where we can completely rely on it, first of all. And even if it were, I think there's something to say about the human aspect of that. And I think it's important to always have that person behind.
Mhm.
Because if not, then we're just living in a world of Wall-E.
Yeah, yeah. Then AI is doing all the work. We're just kind of managing it. But it is something, we can't be blind to it either. It is going to change, and it's changing very fast. And so, um, I think as like an agency owner, I do have to be cognizant of what's out there. Um, I think we have to celebrate it and figure it out, and just be good at it when our clients ask us, "Hey, can you do this?" Or "Do you understand?" We have to be ahead of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great note to end on, Dan. I want to, before we finish the podcast, give you the space to promote anything that you want to promote. This is the moment for you to plug whatever you want. If anything that we spoke about today resonated with our audience, if anybody would like to work with you or find you, the floor is yours.
Cool. Yeah, I appreciate it. If anyone needs any marketing support, Visual Fizz is a great resource. We have 60 case studies to go over. We have probably 75 5-star reviews. We have a lot of happy clients. Full service digital marketing agency. Even if you're not B2B, happy to talk to you. Um, we've been doing it for a long time and have great clients, customers. So check out visualfizz.com. Check out our case studies. Feel free to shoot an email, send a form. It's going to go to me anyway. Then we can hop on a call and chat through any, marketing that you may need. I, yeah, I'm excited to have done this podcast and always love talking about travel and food and running an agency and building an agency. And so if anyone has any questions, definitely let me know.
Awesome. Yeah. And I will be adding the links to all of this on the description of the video so that everybody can click them and go find you easily. Thank you, Dan, for doing this today. It was so fun to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Daniela. Yeah, I appreciate it.
All right, guys, I will see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest And to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.